All right. We're taking all the best old school wisdom and blending it with the top new school methods to bring you the optimal coaching strategies. This is the 80-20 Baseball Podcast with Coach Bo.
Welcome to this week's get-together here, 80-20 Baseball Coaching Community. I got a good story about it being a very small world, and I'll share that with you in just a second. I have some interesting 80-20 observations. Hey, it's 80-20 Baseball Podcast. Some interesting 80-20 principle observations. I have a bonus coaching quote of the week, and we're going to discuss the 5 key parts of hitting that should be coached up at the youth level first. Last week's episode, we talked about the real foundations: sleep, rest, nutrition, hydration. That's a huge area of possible improvement for players without actually getting their baseball skills any better. And the nice thing about being well rested, having better nutrition, being well hydrated, that will help and elevate every single part of a player's game. So if you haven't listened to last week's episode, go back, check that out. We talked about the real foundations that start with our off-the-field preparation with our players. And we're trying to be a podcast that doesn't just make suggestions, that doesn't just bring up these ideas, but gives specific ways to implement them. The implementation, right, is the challenging part. So last week we discussed how to implement that, how to get buy-in, how to sell that to your players so they're moved to improve those areas. Before we dive into the meat and potatoes today, I'd like you to email me, Coach Bo at 8020baseball.com, Coach Bo, B-O, at 8020baseball.com, or you can go to 8020baseball.com and send me a message on the contact page there. Let me know what you would like to see put into the 80-20 coaching plan, the 80-20 coaching course. I'm a little hesitant to use the word course because I don't want it to come across as this semester-long thing. I want it to be packed with great coaching strategies and tips and given to you efficiently so you can absorb it quickly, take it in, and go implement it, along with as much ready-made stuff as possible, practice plans, pregame plan, etc. But I'd like you to email me or direct message me on Twitter. Email's the best way, coachbo at 8020baseball.com, and tell me what you would like to see in there, maybe your top 3 things. I want to make something for all of you. So send me an email, say hi, send me your questions, and share with me what you would like in the 80-20 baseball coaching plan, coaching course that I'm building out right now. All right, now, I was reading an article on Substack by Joe Pompliano. Hope I'm saying that right. Eompliano. And he has a Substack site called Huddle Up. It's interesting sports information, more about the business of sports, which isn't something I'm in, but it's interesting to kind of see the behind the scenes, a lot of good numbers and stats and things like that. And the stories are good. It comes out a couple times a week and it's a good email. But nevertheless, I saw the 80-20 principle in full effect in this article that he wrote, The Unique Business Model That Made Planet Fitness a $6 billion brand. That's the title of the article. So Joe writes this article about Planet Fitness and how they built their brand with a $10 a month membership and a bare bones gym. So they have a bare bones gym and it's a $6 billion brand. And of course, I'm not going to read the entire article here, but I'll take out and share with you the part that stood out the most. So Planet Fitness started back in 1992, 2 brothers named Michael and Mark Grandal. And what they did in a nutshell was they looked at the current workout gym environments in their area. I believe they were in Connecticut, but I think they looked even more broadly than that. And they just said, what can we get rid of? What can we cut out? What can we eliminate from our gym and still retain members and also increase our memberships moving forward to lower churn, attrition, while increasing the membership numbers? And they went the less is more approach. And this is the 80-20 rule. And I thought this was interesting. It was fitness. This is a sports podcast, a youth baseball podcast. They essentially took out 80% of what typical gyms had, or at the time, 80% of what their gym had. And they just kept the 20% that they really thought was important. So they cut out heavy weights. They ditched the group classes, the juice bar, the child care facilities. Now there's more to it. such as they were banking or they're banking on having a ton of members that just don't show up. My theory is in the boardroom or behind closed doors, they might have said, hey, let's target all of these people that don't want to come. And that part is well known. But the people that don't use their gym memberships will keep a $10 a month membership to say they have a gym membership, right? I know when I was in my 20s, I wasn't healthy, but I had a gym membership. Now it was a $20 a month membership. But when the conversation came up, right, I could say, yeah, I got a gym membership. Now, I didn't have to say that I wasn't using it very much. Obviously, looking at me would have given a lot of that away. But nevertheless, when we're coaching our baseball teams, our youth baseball teams specifically, you're going to see lists, you're going to hear items, topics, skills, all sorts of things that we can coach. In fact, I recently brought up a checklist I saw from a college coach that had 75 things that they coach, that they cover. Now, college, of course, is a lot different than youth baseball, but if you all made a list of things you would like to cover or you think you need to cover or things you've heard discussed or shared out or things you've thought of through your own lens of having played baseball when you were younger, you might have a list of 20 or 30 or 40 things that you think you need to cover, go over, coach up. I highly recommend you take the Planet Fitness approach and carve out, slice off, ditch, eliminate as much as you can right off the top. And then with what's left, remember, youth baseball, there's not much practice time compared to high school, college, and pro baseball. It's a lot different. That's why I started this podcast, because I realized as I got out there, now I played high-level college, I played in the minor leagues, and I've coached 15 years of high school baseball. I've coached professional and college players on the side with specific individual programs. And then I started coaching youth baseball. Now I had done lessons with youth players from day one, but I started to coach teams, and I started to coach youth baseball teams of different levels, 8U, 10U, 12U, 14U, sometimes on the same night. I'd be out at the field for 4 hours, 2 hours here, 2 hours there. The next night, 2 hours here, 2 hours there. And this is following high school practices where I'd be at the field for 3 hours coaching high-level high school players. And as I was getting into the youth coaching, I was coaching some pretty talented high school players that were going on to college and even pro baseball. Then I would drive over and coach youth baseball, and it's different. Practices are 2 hours, sometimes less, but let's say about 2 hours, twice a week. And I quickly realized I had to cut out a lot of the things that the high school and college and pro programs were coaching up. And then you take another step back and you say, these kids not only have a lot less time, they're also at a much different spot in their career. They're much closer to the beginning. They're a lot newer. They need a lot more of the fundamentals, the foundational pieces. So when you pile that all together, I think we should take Planet Fitness's approach that's made them a $6 billion company basically by stripping out a ton of stuff and going cheap. And I'm telling you, when it comes to coaching youth baseball, strip out as much as you can, prioritize the key things such as hitting, pitching, defense, ground balls, and making good throws, catching the fly balls and pop-ups, and running the bases with calculated aggression. And lastly, dial in that team culture, have some fun. So I thought that was interesting, the 80-20 rule. They just canned 80% of what the gym was doing, and then they just took off. The rest is history. Went from essentially a gym making no money to a $6 billion bare bones gym. Some other interesting 80-20 stats. This got me looking up some 80-20 stats I thought were interesting. I will just hit on this real quick. When it comes to sports, 20% of pro players get 80% of the endorsements. 20% of roster spots take up 80% of salary cap space for those sports that have salary cap. 20% of stadium seating generates 80% of revenue. When it comes to things like software, 20% of features that a software has drive 80% of the usage. 20% of participants speak 80% of the time in meetings. How many of you have work meetings? I know a lot of you are shaking your head yes right now. 20% of the people speak 80% of the time in meetings. And I think it might even be closer to 1090 on this, or 595, right? So 20%, on average, 20% of participants speak roughly 80% of the time in meetings. That's not a bad thing in some cases, especially if that 20% are the real experts. Now this one is so true. And I think we see this every single day. 20% of our clothes are worn 80% of the time. When I first learned about the 80-20 rule, this is one of the first examples that I learned. So I went into my closet and I just looked over the stuff that I use. I go, yeah, there's 80% right here on the rack of the hangers I don't touch hardly ever. Now I've gotten good at donating a lot of things. I don't like to have a lot of extra stuff. I'm a minimalist, but still 20% of our clothes are worn 80% of the time. Here's one, 20% of roads see 80% of traffic. I was driving, I was on a family trip going through the Sawtooth Mountains through the middle of Idaho up to Montana. And we drove for 6 hours on some back roads and saw very little traffic, 300 miles and very little traffic. Then we get to the city that we got to, Butte, Montana, Butte, America, home of Evel Knievel. And that's where we saw about 90% of the traffic on our drive over to the family get together. 20% of customers drive 80% of complaints. 20% of customers drive 80% of your complaints. So in your work, in your job, how many of your customers complain? And I think these are self-evident numbers. And again, these are approximations, but I thought they were interesting and I wanted to bring those up. And the 80-20 rule is everywhere. And again, the 80-20 rule is an approximation. Our coaching philosophy is not only based on the 80-20 rule, the 80-20 principle. It's one of the pillars. We're definitely into the details and we definitely cover everything we need to cover when it comes to coaching baseball. But we go hard on that 20% of the key things, the key inputs. Now, speaking of that trip to Montana and then up to northern Idaho, went up to Butte, Montana. By the way, Butte, Montana has the 4th tallest statue in America. The 4th tallest statue in America. And I want to say the number 1 tallest, the tallest is in Puerto Rico. So it's actually not even in the 50 states. I believe the Statue of Liberty is number 2, and I can't recall number 3, but the 4th largest statue, the Lady of the Rockies, a 90-foot, just like the bases in baseball, at least at the professional, college, and high school level. It's up on the East Ridge in Butte, Montana. So we head over, after Butte, Montana, we head over to northern Idaho, the kind of the panhandle of Idaho. So we go over to Coeur d'Alene. We're going to do some camping. And I set up plans to meet a good friend of mine, somebody I coached with for 6+ years, coached side by side with for many of those years. A good friend who's moved up to northern Idaho. I'm in touch with him. We're setting up a dinner. We set up a dinner for the last night I'm up there, my family and him and his wife on Coeur d'Alene Lake. It's beautiful. And a couple days before we're supposed to meet up, I tell my wife, we're like, hey, let's go swimming in a lake. We went swimming in the river by the campground. We'd done some other things. I said, let's go check out a lake and go swimming. So we went to Hayden Lake, which is about 10 minutes north of Coeur d'Alene Lake. A lot of lakes up there. And we're getting out of the car. And when I get in a car, I'm always looking to get things out, like clean out the car. And I went to get some stuff, some trash, to walk it over to the trash can. It's about 50 yards away. I walk over to the trash can, turn back around. And as I'm coming back around, I see a truck pull up with a boat trailer, and there was a boat ramp right there to get the boats out of the lake. And so I have to go around this truck. So I'm walking up and I got to go around the truck. And as I get about 15 feet from the truck and I start to kind of banana out and bend my route, start that wheel route, I catch a glimpse of the driver's face and I'm like, wait a second. Lo and behold, it's my good friend, Eric Smith. And if you go to the website, there's a video of coaching pitchers that are taller. It's more for older, say 13, 14U and even high school coaches. But I threw it on there because he reached out and he wanted me to make a video for his players, his team. He was coaching some tall players, some tall pitchers. So I said, well, I'm throwing it on the website. Could be useful. I think it's useful. Anybody who's tall, or at least down the road for some youth players that are on the trajectory to be, or on the path to being tall. So it's a small world. Coach Smith played baseball, grew up playing baseball in Orange County, in the competitive area of Orange County, California. And he played college ball at Oral Roberts University. So any Oral Roberts people out there. So that was great. And here's something I wanted to bring up about Eric. Eric was one of the best coaches that I coached with, not because he had all the answers and not because he came in with this 50 years of experience or this professional baseball resume. He was a great coach to be around because he was very open-minded in an industry, in an area that seems to be very close-minded. In fact, that's the second main reason, besides just knowing that youth baseball needed a lot more support than it was getting, because it's not as flashy to be a youth baseball coach as it is a pro baseball coach for the Rangers or the Phillies, or a college baseball coach making a lot of money, at least at the higher levels. I know high school baseball is underserved, a lot of opportunities for coaches to help out there, but even more at the youth baseball level. And then the support for all you great coaches that are out there. That was the main driver. But the other main driver of me going to the youth level and saying, this is really where I want to help out and support and serve and get all of you a lot closer and in a lot faster way to being a better coach or a great coach was because I know youth baseball coaches, in my experience, are a lot more open-minded. I started to see youth baseball coaches being more open-minded. They didn't have the ego because they didn't have this extensive resume. They didn't play for Cal State Fullerton, University of Texas, or LSU. They didn't play professionally. I'm not saying all of them, but most of them hadn't been drafted. So they were a lot more open to feedback and ideas. Not all. I've come across some closed-minded youth baseball coaches that didn't play much more than high school, which is very shocking. But for the most part, I said, wow, it's an underserved area. And the youth baseball world seemed more open-minded. The coaches, the parents seemed more open-minded. And Coach Smith was one of the most open-minded coaches. We would brainstorm ideas left and right, from micro improvements to complete overhauls of how baseball is commonly coached. And he would never come back with the words no or yeah, but. It was always yes and, or here's another way of looking at it, or that could work and here's something else you'd have to consider, or a different way that might also work. And I know a lot of us in our own lives, I see this a lot more as I get older. I don't know if it's more prevalent now than before, but I'm seeing it more. A lot of the conversations I have, the comeback when I share something, a lot of the things I hear, or some of the words I hear first, are like no or yeah, but. A lot of yeah, buts. And I remember a colleague of mine years ago came up to me on a random Wednesday and said, you know, this world would get along a lot better if we'd all be a little more agreeable. He didn't say we had to agree with everybody 100%, but if we would default to being more agreeable. He said if we could all default to being more agreeable, then work from there, instead of the yeah, but, or right out of hand saying no, without really even fully digesting, hearing out what the other person is saying or sharing. Now, Eric was the best at that, and it was really a small world to run into him at a random lake in northern Idaho, even though I was meeting him a couple nights later at a different lake in northern Idaho. Still pretty cool. Now, I have 2 coaching quotes of the week for you, too. The first one, it's regarding this, or I should say these questions. Should we do things different after a loss? And how should we respond to a loss at our next practice? And this quote is from Steve Kerr, basketball coach Steve Kerr. Quote, whether winning or losing, we basically did the exact same thing. We still played music in practice, still made fun of each other, made fun of ourselves, did birthday videos, invited players, kids to come in and shoot. All of that is authentic to who we are. And we kept doing that. And it mattered, especially when you're losing. That's when the culture has to matter. That's my feeling. End quote, Steve Kerr. The message I think to share, or the message we should get out of this, is you have a bad game. You shouldn't change your demeanor, your tone. You shouldn't get down emotionally as a coach. You have to set the tone. You have to move forward with your players. We have to coach in the present and through the windshield, not the rearview mirror. We have to get present. We have to look forward, extract a couple things, the key big needle movers that we could improve upon that we didn't do well in the last game, the game that we lost, or the games that we lost. Extract, implement a practice plan that will focus on improving those, and keep the vibe the same. That's so important. And the same goes for like the regular season and the postseason. Keep the vibe the same. The second quote. This quote is regarding something that has made practice so much more fun for me over the years, and almost gamified it from a coaching perspective. Quote, the willingness to experiment with change may be the most essential ingredient to success at anything. End quote. Pat Summitt, the great Tennessee women's basketball coach, Pat Summitt. Quote, the willingness to experiment with change may be the most essential ingredient to success at anything. You got to experiment with change. You got to test it. You got to try it out. Be comfortable being uncomfortable. And this is the part that's made practice so much more fun for me over the years as I've gotten older. Because then I go to practice always looking to optimize, improve, get more quality reps in. I'm always trying to get out there and figure out how to get more quality reps, more authentic quality reps in, more game-like quality reps in, how to make practice more fun. Even though you may not want to make changes, especially overhauling some of the things you're doing, you can keep a list going as you go through the season about what you're going to do different next year. Now, some things can be implemented, changed, adjusted right away. Many things can. But some things you need to just hold off for the next season and start from day one and start from Jump Street with those items, because it fits better if you start at the beginning of the year. And if you're getting too flip-floppy, that also sends a inconsistent message, a message of unsureness to players. Now, we don't want to act like we know it all, but we also don't want to act like we have no idea what's going on. And if we change everything all the time, that's not good either. So it's a balance. But no matter what, every single practice, every single drill, you should be looking for ways to optimize it, to get more quality reps in, to make it more fun, to make it more game-like. Trust me, this will keep you busy, along with keeping the drill safe and coaching up some of the skills along the way. Thought those coaching quotes of the week were really good. I like to bring you quotes, but I also really try hard to extract that message and share it back through the lens of a youth baseball coach. All right, the 5 key parts of hitting that should be coached up at the youth level. Now, these are the 5 key parts, not the only parts, but these are the 5 key parts, in my opinion, that should be coached up first at the youth level. The nice thing about these 5 things, and the key part that you need to understand, is that none of these are very technical, and they can be coached up without knowing what the perfect swing should look like for each hitter. One of the fears, or one of the struggles or challenges as a coach, a new coach, or a coach that doesn't know much about hitting, which is pretty much any new coach and a lot of youth coaches, they don't know much about it or enough to feel confident coaching up their hitters. The fear is you're going to go out there and not know where to start, what to change, what to look for, how to make the adjustments. Are those adjustments in the swing, those tweaks, are those the right things? I think the best place to start, not just because of the experience level being lesser, even the pro coaches, even the college hitting coaches don't have it all figured out. Some of them are just still experimenting with things. So let's take out this guesswork and go with things that are very concrete, or a lot more concrete. Let's take out some of the technical stuff. And number 1, I would have my players, before they get in the box, take a big, deep, slow breath. Take a big inhale, exhale before getting in the batter's box. Before each pitch, take a big, deep, slow breath, slow and controlled deep breath, a full breath. Then when they get in the batter's box, they should get their base, their legs, at a 50-50 balance. Their legs should have a 50-50 weight distribution. This isn't very technical. 50-50 is pretty basic. A 50-50 base, kids can figure this out real quick. And I got this from Doug Latta, who's a well-respected hitting coach. And this is something he preaches as one of his biggest needle movers. And Doug Latta, L-A-T-T-A, has some really good videos online. And he talks about the 50-50 base. And I thought about that. I go, that's such an easy thing to coach, but such a big difference maker. So players take a big, slow, controlled deep breath before they get in the box. As soon as they get in the box, get set, get that 50-50 base, weight distribution 50-50, 50% of their weight on each leg. The next thing, once the pitcher starts their delivery, hitters must start their swing so it's on time for the fastball. You have to be on time for the fastball, whatever their fastest pitch is. You have to be on time for that. Doesn't mean you're going to get that pitch, but they need to be on time for that. You can always slow up the swing, but once the pitch is past the hitter, it's over. It's a wrap. So a big, slow, deep breath. They get in the box, get that 50-50 base, and then they need to make sure that their swing is ready to go. They start their initial trigger on time for the fastball. Number 4, we should coach our hitters so their swing is efficient and has no extra movements. Again, I'm not talking about how it moves in terms of where the elbows and the hands and the hips and things are, and the feet and the ankles and the knees and their torso angle and all that, and their spine angle. Those are all important things, but those are not youth baseball priorities at the start. We need to coach up our hitters so their swing is efficient and has no extra movements. That might involve getting a lighter bat. That might involve getting them a little stronger, maybe by swinging some heavier bats in practice. Not heavy bats that they're going to get hurt swinging, but heavier bats in practice just to get a little extra strength. So a big, slow, deep breath before they get in the box. A 50-50 base. They need to start their swing on time for the fastball. We need that swing to be efficient as possible. From start to contact, as efficient as possible. No extra movements. And last but not least, then they need to swing at the correct pitches. I think that's the biggest difference maker of all, but I wanted to put this in sequential order so it's easy to visualize and see as a kind of a step-by-step process. So to me, those are the 5 key parts of hitting that should be coached up at the youth level first. Notice I said youth level first. If you're coaching an experienced 14-year-old, hopefully they've dialed in most of this. I guarantee they haven't dialed in all of it. And in fact, I would coach swing at the correct pitches. I would continue to hammer that home all the way through pro ball if I was a coach. In fact, I got an email from a college hitting coach that said they're using the Plan A, Plan B approach, and they're having a ton of success with it. If you're not sure about the Plan A, Plan B, there's an article on the website, 8020baseball.com. It lays it out. It bullet points it out. It's not complicated. Hitters don't have time to go through complicated thought processes. They're getting tenths of a second to decide and then make contact with a round ball with a round bat and then try to hit it fair. So none of that is very technical stuff. It can be coached up without knowing what the perfect swing looks like. That's the key. And now as coaches, how do we know what the correct pitches are to swing at? This is very self-evident. What do I mean by that? If the hitter hits the pitch and drives it or hits hard line drives off certain pitches, those are the pitches they should be swinging at. If they make weak contact, if they miss it poorly or by a lot, that's definitely a pitch or pitches they should not be swinging at. So let the results tell you or tell the hitter what pitches they should be swinging at. Now, with less than 2 strikes, it's different than with 2 strikes. So to review, big, slow, deep breath, then they get in the box, 50-50 base, then be on time, efficient swing path, and pitch selection. Plan A with less than 2 strikes, plan B with 2 strikes. All right. The best thing you can do to support this podcast, we're getting close to 200 episodes. I haven't run one ad. I've lost a lot of money on this podcast with my editing. Initially, I had to pay for the hosting for a couple years, but more than anything, I've probably put 1,000 hours or more into this podcast, and I haven't run an ad. The best way you can support this is share it. Share this podcast so we can make the baseball community a better place, the youth baseball community specifically. Share this podcast with other coaches you know, your friends, or family. And the next best thing you can do is to leave a rating or review on your podcast app. Doesn't take very long. If you could do those 2 things, it would be greatly appreciated. That'd be just a great way for you to give back and keep the momentum going with this podcast, as it's our weekly check-in, our weekly paradigm molder, our weekly coaching discussion as we continue to get better and better as youth baseball coaches and coaches in general. You can head over to 80/20 Baseball and get the drill design guide emailed to you right away. It's right there on the homepage. And email me your success stories from this past season, especially the 80/20 Baseball stuff you've been using out there. Send me your success stories. Send me your questions. Coach Bo at 8020baseball.com. And until next week, take care of yourself, take care of your health, your family, and your close friends, and go support your players as best you can. You're already on the path because you're listening to this. Now go implement this. Use it. Start working it into your coaching routine. And next week, I have 4 tips for keeping the team's parents happy and supportive. 4 tips for coaches to help keep the team's parents happy and supportive, or at least limit the problems that just seem to be all too common in youth sports these days. So I have 4 tips, specific tips I'll share out next week. So check in every Tuesday when the new episode comes out. And until then, adios.
This has been the 80/20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.